We're diving into an incredibly effective way for memorizing vocabulary in a foreign language, flashcards and spaced repetition. Let's explore how these techniques work, why they're so effective, and how you can start using them today. If you're new here, 朋友们你们好, my name's Matthew. I used to work for Fluent Forever, where I was mentored by the American polyglot and best-selling author Gabriel Wyner. Since branching out on my own, I've realized that I still love learning languages. So I've developed my own techniques and tools, and I'd love to share them with you to help you too. Do you often feel like you're a bit slow at memorizing vocabulary in another language? I feel ya. I feel like that a lot of the times. There are so many words in a language, and I often feel like I'm hitting a brick wall as I try and read and listen to foreign language authentic materials. Sometimes I feel like I'm seeing some progress, but then I come across a new book or a new movie and then more words come at me and I'm still stuck. Most of the time I'm actually seeing and forgetting words that I know I'm familiar with and I've learned in the past, but I somehow still keep forgetting them. I can't remember. This can be a major vocabulary challenge, especially for beginner language learners. If you've tried just reading and listening in the language, but there are still so many words you keep forgetting, or you've tried classes and textbooks, but words just keep jumping out of your head, then why not try this? In my opinion, one of the fastest and most effective ways to memorize vocabulary faster is to use flashcards and spaced repetition. Let's break down what are vocabulary flashcards and why they work so well. Vocabulary flashcards are a powerful tool for language learners designed to help you acquire and retain new words and phrases. Vocabulary flashcards, also known as word cards, are often either made from paper, and you'll often just have a square or rectangular paper as one flashcard, or you could have the same idea but represented in a digital format. The structure of a vocabulary flashcard is usually like this. One side of the card will display the word or phrase in the target language, while on the other side of the flashcard you'll often see the translation of the target word in your native language. Some vocabulary flashcards also include audio and images, and you might even see definitions of the word in your target language. This flashcard will be in a physical card form or its digital equivalent. The way that you'll start memorizing new words in the foreign language is by being tested on your knowledge of the words. You'll be shown one side of the flashcard and you'll then be tested to see if you know immediately the corresponding word or its meaning. A key benefit of using vocabulary flashcards is that they're time efficient. You can focus on memorizing words and phrases that you struggle with rather than an entire list. Plus, you get to directly study the words that are difficult rather than having to wait until you are exposed to those difficult words again through input, which may be difficult, especially for much harder or rarer words. Vocabulary flashcards are also flexible because you can have them in various formats and even via digital apps. So why should you use vocabulary flashcards, and what's some of the evidence that backs up it will help you to memorize vocabulary faster? Well, one of the strongest reasons that I recommend you use digital flashcards to learn new words is because of spaced repetition. Many digital vocabulary flashcards actually come with spaced repetition built into them. Now, to help you understand what is spaced repetition, let me give you this scenario. Imagine trying to remember a friend's phone number. If you look at that phone number once and never see it again, you'll probably forget it quickly and forget it forever. But if you see it again the next day, then a few days after that, and then a week after, you're more likely to remember that phone number and remember it for longer. This sort of thing is the basic idea behind spaced repetition. But instead of trying to memorize Jill's phone number over there, you use spaced repetition to memorize new words in a foreign language. So spaced repetition systems, also known as SRS, are like personal trainers for your brain. Spaced repetition schedules your flashcard reviews at certain intervals so that you remember new words more effectively and over the long term. Here's how spaced repetition works for memorizing new vocabulary, but in simple terms. First, there's initial learning. You see a new word and you learn it for the first time. Then there'll be the first review. The spaced repetition system will remind you to review that word soon after you first learned it, so that it makes sure that the word sticks. After that, you'll have subsequent reviews. If you remember that word correctly, when the SRS shows you it again, then the space between your next review of it will get longer and longer. You won't be reminded to review it again as much. But if you ever forget the word, then the SRS will ensure that you see that word again a lot sooner and more often. The whole idea here is to review the word just before you're likely to forget it. This way, your brain gets a workout exactly at the time that it needs it, which ensures that the memory of a new word gets stronger each time. Now, the effectiveness of spaced repetition was discovered quite a while ago with Ebbinghaus's research on the way that our memories forget information and how best to overcome this forgetting curve through spaced repetitions. But even to this day, spaced repetition has been shown to be an effective tool to help language learners memorize new words. For example, researchers at Macquarie University in Australia did a study of students preparing for their TOEIC test of English. They found that students who used spaced repetition had significantly better improvements in their test scores. This means that spaced repetition is not just a theory, it actually can help you learn and memorize new vocabulary more effectively. Now, the good news is there are a number of vocabulary flashcard apps that already have spaced repetition built in them. For example, there's the open source and free Anki app, which I personally like to use myself. Anki automatically optimizes your study sessions based on spaced repetition, so you can make the most of your time and improve your vocabulary skills as quickly and efficiently as possible. Anki is a simple and nifty tool, but one of the drawbacks of it is that once you download it, either on your phone or your computer, you'll find that it will come to you empty, meaning that there won't be language flashcards for you already there. You'll have to make your own vocabulary flashcards, and that might take some time and effort. There are some free shared decks out there, but it can get overwhelming choosing a good deck out of all of the choices available. But I've got a surprise to make it a lot easier for you to get started. I've made a Anki flashcard deck which contains the 100 most common words in different languages. You can use these vocabulary flashcards to try out Anki and see if digital flashcards and spaced repetition are the right fit for you. Go to the link in the description to get those vocabulary flashcards now. So if you agree that spaced repetition and vocabulary flashcards could be a way to boost your retention of vocabulary, your next question might be, how much vocabulary do I really need to know? Spaced repetition and flashcards can be effective, but to what extent should you use it for vocabulary? How many words are really necessary to memorize? Well, let me start off by saying that if you tried to learn all the words in a foreign language, it would be virtually impossible. If you go through any of the top dictionaries in various languages, you'll find that there are hundreds of thousands of words within those dictionaries. It's just not practical to memorize them all using flashcards and spaced repetition. A more practical approach might be to consider how many words do native speakers in a foreign language actually know. And there are studies that show that adult native speakers in a language tend to know about 10,000 to 20,000 words in that language. That might be a great goal to have if your aim is to reach native-like fluency, but for most of us, we just want to reach a good, solid, basic fluent level to have basic conversations, to survive in the country, and potentially to use the language for work situations. So a good goal, in my opinion, is to just aim for and prioritize the high frequency words in a target language. What I mean by this is to try and learn the most common words in that target language using vocabulary flashcards and spaced repetition. Research actually shows that if you know around 2,000 of the most common words in a foreign language, then you'll be able to understand 90% of the words in most authentic texts in that language. That 2,000 word goal certainly is a worthwhile aim to have, and using Anki or another digital flashcards app that has spaced repetition within it is a great way to be able to memorize all of that necessary and high frequency vocab. With SRS flashcard apps like Anki, you're able to add, store, and then organize all of those new words that you want to learn. But overall, learning and memorizing thousands of words in a foreign language all starts off with learning just one word first. You could get started learning and memorizing the essential vocabulary in a foreign language with the flashcards that I've made for you. Remember, that is available and can be a quick way to get you started to see whether Anki and vocab flashcards and spaced repetition can work out for you as a way to boost your memory of new words. Check out the link in the description to get your flashcards right now. While we have been talking about the benefits and effectiveness of flashcards and spaced repetition, I do admit and recognize that flashcards can't be a substitute for actually reading and listening in the target language. And flashcards cannot take the place of speaking with a real native speaker in that language. But I do believe that flashcards can be a great supplement to help make content in the foreign language a lot easier to understand. This is especially true for beginners. Flashcards also are great for advanced learners because certain harder and rarer words are more difficult to come across just from reading or listening alone. And the flashcards can help to retain those words in your memory because you won't get enough exposure just from input. There are studies that do show that vocabulary acquisition just from classrooms can be inadequate. And there are other studies that also show that if you just rely on reading to gain more vocabulary knowledge, especially of higher level words, it's just not enough. I personally approach learning and memorizing new vocabulary with a more balanced approach. I do still like to talk to native speakers and read and listen in the target language, but at the same time, I do use flashcards to help boost my vocab of those tougher words or beginner words that I do want to learn. I recognize that there are some learners who do find flashcards absolutely boring and they just can't stand them. They don't care how effective or efficient they are. Fair enough. If that's you or you want to discover some other ways to memorize vocabulary, then check out this next video where I talk about how you can memorize new foreign words without flashcards and without spaced repetition.